Greetings, fellow Watford fans. Omar here, and it's time for the Orns 10-minute take on Watford 1, Blackburn Rovers 1. And I must disclose immediately that I did not see this game today, was not able to, but I will say this. From what I read and what I saw on the stat sheet, Watford had vast control of this game. 62% possession on the statistics to Blackburn's 38% possession. At least 15 shots on target. I should say at least 15 shots overall, excuse me, and 6 of those shots on target. And Watford were only able to muster 1 goal from that, and Blackburn were able to get a goal, and they had something like 5 or 6 shots in the game total, with 2 on target. Something like that. And they were able to score 1 of those 2. What that tells me is that Watford were not as efficient, and Blackburn obviously were more efficient than Watford were. Now, that's just off the stat sheet that I've looked at. Now, I did not watch the game. I'll emphasize that. But what I did know is that Blackburn scored first. And that has been the thing that has troubled Watford, especially at Vicarage Road, all season long. Watford conceding the first goal of the match. And it is a very, very heavy lift after that if you're conceding the first goal of the match. And Watford have done this many times this season, both at home and away from home. I do not remember a time where Watford were able to come from behind and win a game. There may only be one time this season where Watford have come from behind after conceding first in these games. It is a very tough enterprise in this championship or in any league to win a game from behind. It's very difficult, especially in the upper levels of English football. It happens. It's not impossible. It's not something that's never been done before in the history of football. But this team this season has had a really poor habit of conceding the opening goal, particularly at Vicarage Road. We saw this just a couple of weeks ago, just a few weeks ago against Rotherham, when Rotherham scored first. I think it was the 20th minute, 26th minute of that game, conceding first. They got a point from that game. Same thing in this game, conceding first, got a point here. Wes Hurt scored the goal for Watford. It turned out in the 74th minute of the game to give Watford a share of the points. And look, from what I assessed from the stats, Watford were on top of Blackburn throughout this game. Surely they were. If you have 62% possession, you have at least 15 shots in the game, and at least 6 or 7 of those on target. You are dominating that game. But if you're not doing enough with the possession, and if you're not finishing these chances, it will hurt you. And it hurt Watford today, obviously, because Watford did not get 3 points in a game they desperately needed 3 points from. So now we've got 2 weeks in a row now where Watford needed to get 3 points and they did not. They didn't get 3 points last week after throwing away a 2-0 lead. And I thought that having thrown away a 2-0 lead and finishing with a 2-2 draw, that would have motivated Watford to come into this game a little angrier. And obviously they must have come into the game a bit angrier because they had 62% possession, which Blackburn don't mind, by the way. Blackburn are very content to let you have the ball. And they will dare you to break them down. And then they hit you on the counter. That's what Blackburn are known for. They're trademark counter-attacking specialists. They don't mind you having 60%, 50%, 70% possession. They will sit and hunker deep and defend against you. And then they'll spring a counter on you. And people like Ben Brereton Diaz are lethal. They're lethal finishers. Now, he didn't score today. Bradley Dack did. Dack is a danger man for them. But what Watford had to do today was to break down this Blackburn side and put them to the sword. They weren't able to do that today. Wes Hurt got the goal. There were some very important substitutions. Keenan Davis, apparently, I'm told, made a big difference in the game. And Wes Hurt scoring the goal for Watford. That was his debut, and he scores on his debut for Watford, just like Ryan Porteous did last week. He was on his debut for Watford. He got the goal for them. And so the two of them played today in the centre-half pairing. Apparently, some Watford fans have told me that they did very well today in that centre-back pairing. So, look, Go with what works. Cathcart's out injured. Sierralta's going to be out long term. Stick with what works. Obviously, these two lads work today in the centre back pairing. But what I'm worried about is what we're doing up top. From what I heard with this game, um, the strikers had chances, they just didn't finish, and finishing has been our problem all season long. All season long, we have not been able to finish these chances, and that comes with confidence, that comes with belief, and that comes with a sense of precision and care. You got to finish chances in this league, and that's the difference. As they say, it's a make or miss league. And if you don't finish chances, you're not going to get very far. Now, look, Watford are sixth in the championship now. They're still in the playoff places. The only thing that I look at that's encouraging is that they are getting these players back. Tom Cleverley came back today after months away. He had surgery and he rehabbed. And look, it's great to see him back. Apparently, he got subbed into the game in the second half. Great to see him back on the pitch. I look forward to actually watching him on Tuesday night at Burnley. I look forward to seeing what he can bring to the game. He is someone who's got some grit. I think his better days are behind him, but one thing that is invaluable in these games is your grit and your heart. And Tom Cleverley has grit and he has heart and he has desire and he has passion. And that can make up for a lot in your lack of abilities, perhaps, or not as being as great a footballer or as good as a footballer as you used to be. One thing that is intangible in these games that you need is grit, heart, and passion and effort. And Tom Cleverley will give you that every game. Even if he's made a mistake or two, he will give you that. And hopefully the rest of these lads will follow that template on Tuesday. Now, as for Imran Louza, he came back as well, second half. Again, apparently that was probably a very important boost for Watford. Again, I did not see this game today, but Louza will be invaluable to this team down the stretch. And I think that's very important to see that he's come back. João Pedro got the captaincy today. That's important as well for his leadership credentials for the future. And again, I thought that the lineup at least looked very good on paper. Did it perform on the pitch? Well, some Watford fans have told me that the performance was decent. Other Watford fans have told me it was very poor. Then still other Watford fans have said that it's encouraging. But again, the problem was finishing. And I think Watford generally have had this problem all season long with the finishing. And again, conceding the opening goal of the game. They've done it so many times at the Vic. Conceded the opening goal against Swansea, conceded the opening goal against Middlesbrough, conceded the opening goal against Coventry, conceded the opening goal against Millwall, conceded the opening goal against Rotherham, conceding the opening goal against Blackburn. We've done this too many times this season, and we don't start these games well. And again, I don't know how Watford started there because they didn't see the game, but we generally speaking, especially at the Vic, do not start these games well. And I really wonder how much of a playoff run we can honestly have if we continue to concede the opening goals of these games. It's not going to be a good look for us. And although I think we're going to make the playoffs, it's going to be a real battle ahead to do so because you've got teams below us who have played fewer games than we have, who have better form than we do. We have only won 3 of our last 12 championship games. 3 of our last 12 or 13. That's a very poor run to go on to have momentum for any playoffs. We are continuing to slide backwards down the table. And we've got games next against 3 very difficult opponents. Burnley, I think that's house money in that game. I think we can actually get a point from that game because we're going to be playing with house money there. And we're going away from home where we usually play better. And I think we can get something out of that game, believe it or not. The game I'm really worried about is West Brom. Watford against West Brom is the worrying one for me because, again, it's at home where Watford don't play well and against a team that we need to be beating for these playoff spots. And West Brom are just 2 points behind us, just outside the playoffs, and they're going to go in looking to win the game. They're going to do the things that all the other away sides have done at the Vic, which is disrupt, slow the game down, bog down the game. But Watford are going to have to be careful in that game. And, of course, the game after that, away at Sheffield United. And we can forget automatic. That's not happening this season. We are 15 points behind Sheffield United at the moment. No chance of catching them here now. Sheffield United are not going to drop 5 games. They're not losing 5 more games this season. They've already lost 5 total through the first 30. They are not going to lose 5 more in the final 16. They're just not. They're not going to do that. Unless some calamitous thing happens, they're not losing 5 games. They're not losing 6 games because you really need to lose 6 more games. And Watford have to win those games as well to make up the standings. And they're not going to do it because they've not won 6 games in a row all season. They're not going to do that now. They've got now 16, they've got 15 games left to play. Watford do. And yes, these 3 games are going to be tough. After that, the teams that they play are not as strong. But here's my concern again. Watford have played down to the level of their competition in a lot of these games. They've come into the game against Bristol City a few weeks ago, and they played down to that level. They come into the game against Blackpool a few months ago when they played at Bloomfield Road. Blackpool were in the bottom 5 in that game, played down to their level. And so even though the games get easier for Watford after these next 3, the problem for Watford is playing down to the level of these teams that have not done as well this season. And what Watford must do that they've not done nearly enough of this season is assert themselves from the off and bring your game and impose it on the opposition. Stamp your imprimatur, put your stamp on these games from minute 1. Don't wait until you've conceded the goal to start going hell-bent for leather, throwing in the pots and pans, because that, to me, is a losing strategy. Your first 20 minutes of a game is the most important, and something has to be drilled into these lads now, where they really understand that the first 20 minutes of any game they play now is the most important, because Watford have got to score first in these games. So that's where I stand. Look, I repeat this, I did not get to see the game today between Watford and Blackburn, but these points that I'm making now are points that apply to the game and apply to any game that Watford play from here on in, because this playoff run is going to be very intense. You've got 5 or 6 teams breathing down Watford's neck within a point or 2 of them who are really going to be up for Watford. Watford have just come down from the Premier League. Watford have a perpetual target on their back this season. And the formula for all of these away sides at the Vic is to come in and bog the game down, get physical, frustrate Watford's rhythm, catch Watford on the counter. That is what they've been doing. And it's worked. Pretty much all these games, it's worked. I need to see Watford now be more assertive. And while I'm very optimistic about what Watford could look like once they get all of these players back, what I am not very pleased about and what I'm very concerned about is the mentality. How are Watford starting these games? They could have all the best players in the world who have played football. They could have Messi on the pitch. They could have Ronaldo on the pitch. Well, Pele's passed away, but they could have all the greats on the pitch from centuries and decades past. But if they don't start the first 20 minutes of the game well and they concede the first goal in the game, doesn't mean anything. Doesn't matter who they got on the pitch. So for me, the most important thing for Watford now is the first 20 minutes of these games. Score first. Do not concede that first goal, because you then have to do so much more work, so much more chasing of the game, and your initial game plan goes out the window. So that is what I have here on this 10-minute take. Again, it finished Watford 1, Blackburn Rovers 1. Apparently a frustrating day from all accounts from what I'm hearing. And Watford now have really no time to reflect on this game. They've got to get ready for Burnley on Valentine's night. This has been the Orns 10-minute take.